These days, Criterion is known as the primary developer of Need for Speed Unbound, with Codemasters Cheshire as a support studio. And they also developed a lot of the Need for Speed games in the 7th generation, alongside Slightly Mad Studios and EA Black Box. But Criterion Software, as it was originally called, was founded in 1993 by Canon's European research arm founder and leader, David Liao Key. The plan for Criterion Software was to create multimedia developer tools, and the one that they were known for was the RenderWare game engine, which only became a game engine officially in 2000, as for the first 7 years of its existence, it was just a graphics API for the C programming language, which was used by over 800 companies worldwide by October 1996. This API/game engine would go on to be used in a lot of games, with the first being Scorched Planet in 1996. Scorched Planet was developed by a subsidiary of Criterion Software known as Criterion Studios, which was founded only 9 months before the game's release. The last game to use the RenderWare game engine was another one developed by Criterion, the remaster of Burnout Paradise in 2018. There were many notable games between 1996 and 2018 which also used RenderWare as a game engine, such as the 3D era Grand Theft Autos, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3, and one of the strangest racing games that I have ever played, Extreme Express. But the game that I'm going to be talking about today is one of Criterion's own, a game that started a lot of people's favourite racing game franchise. A game franchise that, due to internal politics at Electronic Arts, is no longer around, and hasn't been for a while. I am of course talking about the already mentioned Burnout. The development of Burnout started in 1999, with the codename Shiny Red Car, and its planned release title was going to be Driving Hero. The director of the game, Alex Ward, said that it was inspired by the film RONIN, but to be honest, I don't think that's true. More recently, people have been comparing it to a Konami arcade racer called Thrill Drive, and there is a good reason to why the two games are similar. In a 2019 interview, one of the developers admitted to copying a lot of Thrill Drive's gameplay, as the original plan was to make Burnout a PS2 port of the Konami game. Burnout was released on the PlayStation 2 in November 2001, and a few months later in 2002 on the original Xbox and the GameCube. Burnout was published by Acclaim Entertainment, a company that didn't seem to know how to market their games, but Sega were originally going to publish the game in Japan under the name Grand Heat, but either Sega or Criterion pulled out of the deal, and as a result the game was never sold in that region. Burnout has 3 different game modes, the main one being the Championship game mode, and overall there are 6 of them that need to be completed in order to finish the game. 4 of these championships have 4 events and 2 of them have 1. Although that might not sound like that many, and to be honest it isn't, it will take you a while to get through all of them, as each event is quite long. For example, the very first event took me 8 minutes, and that was 1 event out of 3 in that championship. In order to complete championships, you have to reach the objective that the game sets for you at the beginning of every event. The game will tell you what position you need to finish the event in order to move on to the next, as you don't always need to finish first to move on. When you enter a championship, you can use any car that you have unlocked, but the game won't change the opponent cars accordingly, so you can have the Super Mini up against the Pickup, the Sports Coupe, and the Muscle. That doesn't really matter, as every car in the game pretty much drives the same, with only minor differences between them. I went back to the first championship after completing the game to see what opponents would drive if I picked the tow truck, and it was the same as with any other car. but the tow truck was somehow almost competitive. I think that's because of the game's arcade machine inspirations. Overall, it would have been better to restrict the player's choice of cars for each championship, as it would have given people a reason to drive every car in the game. That's not a big issue, but I thought it was something worth mentioning. Burnout isn't just full of championships though. In the specials menu, you have Face-Off and Survival. The Survival game mode has you driving any car that you've unlocked on any track that you've unlocked, and you have to drive as fast as possible in a sort of time trial without crashing. Once you've crashed, then that's it. Game over. I like this game mode, and having the game end the event once you've crashed adds a bit more danger to things. I found that I was a little bit more cautious with my driving and didn't make that many risks, but that did come at a cost. Because I didn't take risks, I didn't get boost. And because I didn't get boost, I ran out of time quite a lot when driving the bus for extra gameplay footage. And then we have the face-off events. Face-offs are one-on-one races. That is pretty much the only way that I can describe them, as they are the same as any race in the championships, but with only one opponent. The game only has 4 face-off events, so as far as the entire game mode goes, it doesn't take that long to complete. However, the unlocking of them is staggered throughout the game, so you can't do all of them at once at the beginning. I wish the developers put a little bit more thought into the face-offs, as I think they didn't really need to be in the game as they are, as every track, car and gameplay mechanic can be found in the championships. The face-offs are the events that allow you to unlock new cars, but as there are only 9 cars in the game, that does leave room for more events. Yes, I know a large portion of the car list is unlocked from the beginning, and I think this is one of the game's biggest issues. The way Burnout is structured is nothing like any other game, and there may be a reason to why that is. Perhaps it would have been better to start the player off in the Super Mini and then let them unlock the other 8 cars slowly throughout the game as prize cars for the championships, as that would have slowed down the progression, but not to the point where it would be boring, which in turn would have given the game more replayability. The racing overall is good, but it is far from perfect. Getting from one checkpoint to the other isn't really a challenge, so spreading them out a little bit more would have given them more of a reason to be in the game, and that would have made the game a little bit more challenging. Something in the game that is challenging are the AI opponents. The AI are quick from the start, and that's something you don't really get in racing games released now, as racing games in the 8th and 9th console generations are developed for everyone to be able to pick up and play, and it was something that was slowly phased out later in the 6th generation to the early 8th generation. It is something that is becoming more and more evident now due to the popularity of gaming subscription services such as Xbox Game Pass, PlayStation Plus, and EA Play. The difficulty of this game does put some people off, but it is all about getting used to the way the game feels. And it's not really an issue, but what is an issue is the lack of content. For example, the tracks. You don't get a big selection of tracks, but you do get a nice selection. The tracks are all based in either a city, on a highway, or in a coastal town, which looks to be based on the European town Nice. Have a look at the Nice in Forza Horizon 2, and you may see some similarities. There was also going to be a track based in Japan called Mikei City as well, but that was cut during development, and I think quite late on into the game's development, as promotional images for the game did include it. Of the tracks that are in the game, quite a few of them do look the same as each other, but I think that's down to there being only 3 locations. Every track that is in the game has been designed really well, and it's the same with Burnout's vehicles. Burnout only has a few vehicles. You have the Super Mini, Pickup, Muscle, Saloon, Saloon GT, Sport Coupe, Roadster, Bus, and Tow Truck. A fire truck was also planned to be in the game, but was cut quite late into the game's development, and didn't appear in the Burnout series until the third game. Every vehicle is made for the game. This is because licensing cars for a game like Burnout would be impossible due to the crashing, and Burnout isn't on its own here. If you think about it, you may notice a correlation between the gameplay of other racing games and whether or not they have licensed cars. Car manufacturers don't want to license their cars for games such as Burnout, Flatout, Stuntman, Crash and Burn, Motorstorm, and Driven to Destruction, due to those games making cars look unsafe in crashes. But the developers did base their cars on what real car manufacturers were selling at the time. For example, the Saloon is based on the Lexus GS300, and the Roadster is based on the Lotus Elise S2. The vehicles in Burnout may be named after what type of vehicle they are, but that wasn't always going to be the case, as they were all going to have unique names, such as the Venom SX instead of Coupe, and the UT500 Jackhammer instead of Pickup. To be honest, cutting the UT500 Jackhammer name may have been a good idea. Burnout is, in a way, just a tech demo, which showed how good of a combination the then new 6th gen consoles and the RenderWare engine was. Although it doesn't have that many cars, tracks and events, it is all about gameplay, which Criterion Games did a good job in creating, even if the handling is twitchier than other early 6th gen arcade racers. That is something that you should be able to get used to quite quickly though. The first Burnout is essentially a racing game that you'd find in the arcade but with progression and on a console. It is a game that I do recommend, but not necessarily to be played through in its entirety, as it just needs to be experienced, due to how unique it is. These days, it gets overlooked, and I think those who play it for the first time need to manage their expectations a little bit better, as of course it's not going to be as good as the later games in the Burnout series, but it did things slightly differently. A lot of older video games get overlooked for the same reasons. Think about it. Toka, Need for Speed, and to an extent, even Forza. But no matter how many new features get introduced over time, there is always something that the older games have which the newer ones don't. And sometimes it is worth looking for that one thing, as that particular aspect may become one of your favourite features in any game. This has been my review of Burnout on the PlayStation 2. I had been sitting on the script for this review since before the classic British motor racing review, which I've had to unlist for a couple of reasons. But whilst waiting for a good time to do voiceover for this video, Fami and FastMiner07 released their Burnout videos where they go more in depth with Burnout's development and the history of Criterion. The pinned comment has a link to their videos, as I do highly recommend them. I was going to go more in depth with mismanaged expectations with video games, new and old, as it is an important topic for discussion, but I cut a large majority of it from this video as I think it will need a video of its own. And I'm not sure if I'm the right person to make that video, but we'll see. The next review will be of Ford Racing on the original PlayStation, which will be quite short, but it needs to be done to give context for some re-reviews that I have planned for late next year. For now though, it is time to end. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.